Everyone believed that Chief Obina Ladejo, a deaf millionaire, would die alone. He himself believed it. Every night he dined alone at that enormous table, in the silence that had pursued him since childhood, until Adaora Chukwu, a 4-year-old girl, daughter of Kemi Adebayo, a humble cleaner, entered his dining room without permission. What this child did changed the destiny of the three forever. Our stories have traveled far. Where are you watching from today? Share with us in the comments. Chief Obina Ladejo dined alone every night, and that no longer bothered him. Or at least that's what he kept telling himself as he looked at the long mahogany table, too big for just one person. At 42, heir to one of Nigeria's largest luxury hotel chains in Lagos, he had everything money could buy. Except the one thing that truly mattered: someone to share that silence. The penthouse on Victoria Island was impeccable. Floor-to-ceiling glass, Italian furniture, expensive paintings on the walls, everything perfectly arranged, everything absurdly empty. Obina cut a piece of the steak the cook had left, ready before leaving. He chewed slowly, without haste. There was no reason to hurry. No one was waiting for him. Deaf since he was 7, when an illness destroyed his hearing, Obina learned early that the world had no patience for the girlfriends left him when they discovered they had to repeat things. Company partners avoided meetings with him. Even his own family seemed embarrassed in his presence. So, he decided to protect himself. He stopped using his hearing aid in public. He stopped attending parties. He stopped trying to fit in. If the world didn't want him, he didn't want the world either. Simple as that. But on that Thursday night, something was about to change. Obina looked up from his plate and saw a strange movement at the pantry door. Someone small, very small. A child? He blinked, confused. It wasn't possible. There were never children there. The penthouse was a place of silence, of organized solitude. Children were not part of that scene. But there she was, a little girl with curly hair, wearing a simple dress. She held a pink lunchbox and looked at him with huge, curious eyes. Obina was paralyzed. The girl took a few more steps towards him, smiling. She opened her mouth and said something he couldn't hear. Without his hearing aid turned on, the world around him was just an absolute void. She tried again. This time she gestured with her little hands, pointing to the table and then to the lunchbox. Obina remained motionless, not knowing how to react. How long had it been since anyone had entered that room? How long had it been since anyone sought him out just to be near him? The child didn't give up. She walked until she was right in front of him and raised 4 little fingers in the air. Then she pointed to herself and smiled even wider, as if she were saying the most important thing in the world. Obina felt something strange in his chest, something warm and uncomfortable, something he no longer knew how to identify. It was then that the pantry door burst open and Kemi Adebayo entered running, her face pale with fright. "Adaora," she shouted, and even without hearing, Obina read her name on her lips. Adaora. The girl's name was Adaora. Kemi had worked there for 2 years. Always quiet, always discreet. Obina barely noticed her. He knew she cleaned the penthouse 3 times a week, that she arrived early and left before he returned from the office. That was all. They had never really talked, never exchanged more than a nod. But now she was there, holding her daughter's arm, her eyes full of fear. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ladejo. I swear it won't happen again. The creche didn't have a space today, and I had no one to leave her with. I asked her to stay quiet in the pantry, but she just came out." Kemi was speaking too fast. Obina only managed to understand half, but he understood enough. He understood the despair. He understood the fear of losing her job. He looked at Adaora again. The girl didn't seem scared, just curious. She waved at him with her free hand and made a heart with her fingers. Obina felt his chest tighten again. Kemi pulled her daughter more firmly. "Let's go, Adaora. Sir is having dinner. We shouldn't disturb him." But before she could leave, Obina did something he himself didn't expect. He raised his hand and gestured for them to stop. Kemi froze in place, her face even paler. Obina knew what she was thinking, that he was going to fire her, that he was going to yell, that he was going to throw them out. But he didn't do any of that. Instead, he took his hearing aid from his trouser pocket and put it in his ear. The world gained sounds again. Kemi's heavy breathing, the hum of the air conditioning, and Adaora's thin, sweet voice, still trying to say something. "Sir, are you alone?" the girl asked, tilting her head to the side. Obina swallowed hard. It had been so long since anyone had asked him such a simple, direct, true question. He looked at the enormous table, at the solitary plate, at the silence that surrounded him every night, and for the first time in a long time, Chief Obina Ladejo admitted the truth. "I am," he replied, his voice hoarse from disuse. I am alone. Adaora smiled as if she had just solved the biggest problem in the world. Then, can I have dinner with you, sir? Kemi couldn't believe what was happening. She had known Obina Ladejo for 2 years, and in all that time she had never seen that man smile, never seen him look at someone that way. And she definitely never imagined that her daughter, Adaora, would be the first person to break the ice around him. Mr. Ladejo, we don't need to bother you. I'm taking her home now, Kemi insisted, holding the girl's hand firmly, but Obina shook his head slowly. He pointed to the chair next to his, and then looked at Adaora. She said she was hungry, he replied, and there was something different in his voice. Something softer. Let her eat. Kemi felt her legs tremble. It didn't make sense. Obina Ladejo was known for being distant, cold, inaccessible. All the employees commented that he barely looked at people, that he lived locked in his own world. And now he was offering dinner to Adaora. I brought her lunchbox, sir. She can eat in the pantry herself. Kemi tried again. What is your name? Obina asked suddenly, completely ignoring what she had said. Kemi blinked, confused. It's Adebayo. Kemi, he repeated it as if testing the sound of the name. How long have you worked here? 2 years, sir. Obina was silent for a moment, looking at her as if truly seeing her for the first time. Kemi felt her face flush. She wore her usual worn-out uniform, her hair tied in a simple bun, her hands rough from scrubbing floors. She must have looked exactly what she was, a tired woman, struggling alone to raise her daughter. 2 years, Obina murmured, and I never asked your name. Kemi heard something in his voice that made her heart ache. It wasn't pity, it was something else. Perhaps shame, perhaps sadness. Adaora, who had no patience for serious conversations, pulled her mother's hand firmly. Mummy, can I stay? The quiet man said I can have dinner with him. Kemi looked at her boss, waiting for some sign. He merely nodded, indicating the empty chair. You can let her stay, it's no problem. Kemi didn't know what to do. Refusing seemed disrespectful, accepting seemed risky, but Adaora had already let go of her hand and was climbing into the high chair next to Obina, swinging her little legs in the air. Thank you, sir, she whispered, her voice faltering. I'll finish cleaning the kitchen while she eats. Just call me if you need anything. She turned around, her heart pounding, but before leaving, she looked back one last time, and what she saw left her completely speechless. Obina was helping Adaora open her lunchbox. The girl smiled at him, talking non-stop, gesturing with her energetic little hands. And Obina listened, truly listened. He had even put on his hearing aid, something Kemi had never seen him do. Kemi felt her eyes burn. No one had ever treated Adaora with such attention. No one had ever stopped to listen to the girl's endless chatter. People always thought she was too noisy, too lively, too intense. But Obina Ladejo, the most reserved and solitary man Kemi had ever known, was there, smiling at her daughter, as if nothing else in the world mattered. In the pantry, Kemi leaned against the sink and took a deep breath. Her hands trembled as she washed the dinner dishes. She couldn't afford to lose that job. It was all she had. The salary paid the rent for their cramped flat in the busy Lagos neighborhood, their food, Adaora's clothes. Without that job, they wouldn't survive, but at the same time, a part of her couldn't stop thinking about the scene she had just witnessed, the way Obina looked at Adaora, the way he had asked her name after 2 years. 15 minutes later, Kemi returned to the dining room. Adaora was sitting next to Obina, showing him drawings she had made at school. He observed each scribble carefully, nodding occasionally, asking questions Kemi couldn't quite hear. Adaora, my dear, let's go. It's late, she called softly. The girl pouted, but I haven't finished telling the quiet man about Teacher Bimpy yet. Obina looked at Kemi, and for the first time, she saw something like vulnerability in his eyes. Can she stay a little longer? He asked, and there was almost a plea in that sentence. Kemi hesitated. All the rules she had imposed on herself screamed that this was wrong, that she couldn't mix work with personal life, that she couldn't take advantage of her boss's kindness. But when she looked at Adaora, so happy, so comfortable, she couldn't say no. 10 more minutes, she conceded. Just 10 more minutes. Adaora cheered as if she had won the lottery. Obina just nodded, but Kemi noticed the relief on his face, and it was at that moment, seeing the two of them together, that Kemi understood something important. Obina Ladejo wasn't doing her a favor, he was doing himself a favor. He was holding on to those minutes of companionship that light Adaora brought, as if they were the most precious thing in the world, which perhaps they were. Obina couldn't explain what was happening to him. There was something about the child's presence that stirred everything inside his chest. Adaora talked non-stop, gestured with her hands, laughed at things he didn't quite understand, and yet he didn't want her to stop. Sir, Did you know I'm 4 years old? Adaora asked for the third time, showing her outstretched fingers. Yes, I know, Obina replied, trying not to smile too much. And did you know I can already write my name? Oh, let me show you. She took a cloth napkin from the table and began to scribble with the pen Obina had in his pocket. The letters came out crooked, enormous, filling all the available space. But it was there, Adaora. Very beautiful, Obina praised, and he wasn't lying. Adaora smiled, satisfied, and then looked at him with those enormous, curious eyes. You don't talk much, do you, sir? The question caught Obina off guard. He was silent for a few seconds, not knowing how to answer, how to explain to a 4-year-old that he didn't talk because no one had ever cared to listen to him. No, he finally admitted. I don't talk much. Why? Because, Obina hesitated, because I don't hear very well. So, sometimes it's difficult to converse. Adaora stopped and became thoughtful. Then, without warning, she stood up on her chair and moved closer to him. You use that thing in your ear to listen, right, sir? I saw when you put it on. Obina felt his face flush. Normally, he hated it when people noticed his hearing aid. He hated the pitying glances, the overly loud voices, the way everyone seemed to treat him as if he were less capable. But coming from Adaora, the observation didn't sound like judgment, just curiosity. Yes, he confirmed. I use a hearing aid. Ah, Adaora said, as if that explained everything. So, when you don't have it on, you don't hear anything? Nothing. The girl was silent for a moment, processing the information. Then, she did something completely unexpected. She raised both hands and began to gesticulate slowly, forming signs Obina didn't immediately recognize. What are you doing? He asked, intrigued. I'm inventing a language for us, Adaora explained excitedly. Oh, this here, she made a heart with her hands, means, I like you, sir. And this here, she pointed to her own eyes and then to Obina, means I'm seeing you, sir. And this here, she continued creating signs one after another, each more inventive than the last. Obina watched her, fascinated. No one had ever tried to communicate with him that way. No one had ever bothered to find a way to reach him. You are very smart, he said. And his voice came out hoarser than he intended. Adaora smiled proudly. Mummy says so too. She says I'm smart like her. Your mother is a very courageous woman. It's true, Adaora agreed immediately. She works a lot, you know? Every day she leaves early and comes back late. Sometimes she gets home so tired she can barely stand. But she always plays with me before I sleep. Always. Obina felt something tighten in his chest. He looked at the pantry door, where Kemi was probably still finishing cleaning. How many nights had she spent working until she couldn't take it anymore? How many times had she smiled at her daughter, even when exhausted? Your mother loves you very much, Obina said softly. I know, Adaora replied with the simplicity of someone who had never doubted it. And I love her too. We only have each other, you know? My daddy left when I was a baby, but it's okay. Mummy says we don't need him, that we are strong on our own. Obina swallowed hard. There was so much truth in those words, so much pain hidden behind the girl's joy. Adaora spoke of abandonment as if it were normal, something that didn't affect her. But Obina knew how to recognize loneliness when he saw it, because he himself carried his every day. You two are very strong indeed, he agreed. Adaora swung her little legs, satisfied. Then, without warning, she asked, You are also alone, right, sir? The question hit Obina like a punch to the stomach. He opened his mouth to deny it, to invent some excuse, but he couldn't, because it was true. He was alone, completely alone. I am, he admitted for the second time that night. Adaora looked at him with those big, understanding eyes. Then, without saying anything, she extended her small hand and held his hand on the table. Now we can be alone together, she said, smiling. And Obina felt the defenses he had built over entire years begin to crumble. There, sitting next to that 4-year-old child, he realized that he had spent so much time protecting himself from the world that he had forgotten what it was like to be touched, what it was like to be seen, what it was like to be important to someone. Kemi appeared at the door, ready to pick up her daughter, but when she saw the two holding hands, she stopped midway. There was something on her face, something akin to hope, and Obina understood at that moment that that night had changed everything, that he would no longer be the same after that Adaora had entered his life and lit a light that he didn't even know had been extinguished. In the following days, Obina found himself waiting for Thursdays. It was the day Kemi cleaned the penthouse, and, although she never brought Adaora again, he kept looking at the pantry door with an expectation he couldn't explain. Ngozi Okafor, his secretary, noticed the change almost immediately. Mr. Ladejo, are you well? she asked one Friday morning. As she organized documents on his desk, Obina looked up from the computer. I am. Why? It's just that you seem different. More present, perhaps. He didn't know what to answer. Ngozi was right. He felt different. Since that night with Adaora, something had changed inside him. It was as if a door that had been locked for years had finally opened. And now he couldn't close it again. I'm just tired, he lied. Ngozi looked at him with that expression that clearly said she didn't believe him, but she didn't insist. She just tidied the papers and left the room, leaving Obina alone with his own thoughts. He had tried to return to his normal routine, waking up early, going to the office, solving company problems, returning home, dining alone. But nothing seemed enough anymore. The penthouse was too silent, the table was too empty, and he missed something he had barely known, the company of someone who truly cared. It was the following Thursday that everything changed again. Obina was in his home office, answering emails when he heard a noise coming from the living area. He took off his hearing aid for a second, confused, then put it back on and listened more carefully. It was a laugh, a sharp, joyful, child's laugh. His heart raced. Obina got up too quickly, almost knocking over his chair, and went to the door. And there she was, Adaora, sitting on the living room floor, drawing on sheets of paper that Kemi had probably found in a cupboard. Adaora, he called, and his voice came out softer than he intended. The girl looked up, and her face lit up completely. Quiet man, you are here. Quiet man? Obina couldn't help but smile. I am. What are you doing? Drawing. Oh, I made a drawing of you, sir, she said, proudly showing a paper with colorful scribbles. There was something that looked like a stick figure, and next to it a huge heart. It's very beautiful, Obina praised. And he really thought so. Adaora stood up and ran to him, holding the drawing with both hands. It's for you to keep, so you won't be alone. When you look at the drawing, you'll remember that I'm thinking of you, sir. Obina felt his throat tighten. He took the paper carefully, as if it were the most precious thing in the world, and perhaps it was. Thank you, he managed to say. Kemi came running from the kitchen, her face red with embarrassment. Mr. Ladejo, I'm sorry again. I left her in the living room for just a minute while I cleaned the bathroom, but You don't need to apologize, Obina interrupted. I like having her here. Kemi blinked in surprise. She opened her mouth to say something, but couldn't. She just stood there looking at him, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Really? Obina insisted, looking directly at her. I enjoy her company. If you need to bring her again, it's no problem. Kemi put her hand to her chest, her eyes watering. Are you sure, sir? I don't want to abuse your kindness. I know it's not right to mix work with. I'm sure, Obina guaranteed. And it was true. He was more certain of that than anything else in his life. Adaora jumped for joy. Mummy, can I always come? Please, please, please. Kemi looked from her daughter to Obina and back to her daughter. Then, slowly, she agreed. All right, but you have to promise you'll behave. No making a mess, no disturbing Mummy's work. Agreed, agreed. Adaora shouted and threw herself into her mother's arms. Obina watched the two embracing and felt that tightness in his chest again. There was so much love there, so much care, so much dedication. Kemi raised her daughter alone, working hard every day. And yet, Adaora was the happiest child he had ever seen. While Kemi went back to cleaning, Adaora stayed with Obina. She showed him all the drawings she had made, told stories about school, taught him more signs from their invented language, and Obina listened to everything. Every word, every laugh, every gesture, because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't just existing, he was living. That night, after Kemi and Adaora had left, Obina was alone in the apartment again. But this time the silence didn't weigh so heavily, because on the living room table, stuck with a magnet on the refrigerator, was Adaora's drawing, the stick figure, and the enormous heart. He touched the paper with his fingertips and felt something warm spread through his chest. Hope. That's what he was feeling. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't have to be alone anymore. Hope that that girl and that woman had come to stay. Kemi didn't sleep well that night. She kept tossing and turning in the narrow bed of her modest flat, looking at the ceiling, trying to understand what was happening. Obina Ladejo had allowed her to bring Adaora. More than that, he had said he liked the girl's company. It didn't make sense. Men like him didn't care about employees' children. Men like him barely looked at people like her. But Obina had looked, had seen, and worse, he had cared. Mummy, the quiet man is nice, right? Adaora asked the next morning, as Kemi combed her hair for school. Yes, my dear, he seems to be. I like him. He really listens when I talk, you know? Not like those people who keep looking at their phones while we're talking. Kemi smiled, even with a heavy heart. I know, my love. We can visit him again, yes, but only when Mummy is working there. Agreed? We can't go to his house for no reason. Adaora pouted but agreed. Kemi finished getting her daughter ready, gave her breakfast, took her to the small school, and then went to work. But throughout the journey, she couldn't stop thinking about Obinna. There was something about him that intrigued her. It wasn't just the obvious loneliness, or the way he seemed surprised whenever someone was kind to him. It was something else. It was the vulnerability he hid behind his coldness. It was the sadness he carried in his eyes. Kemi knew that kind of sadness. She herself carried hers every day. Ever since Adaora's father had left, leaving her alone and pregnant, Kemi had learned to swallow the pain and move on. She had no time to lament. She had a daughter to raise. But sometimes, in the silent pre-dawn hours, she found herself imagining what it would be like to have someone by her side, someone to share the burden, someone who would look at her the way Obinna had looked at Adaora that night. She shook her head, pushing away the dangerous thoughts. She couldn't think like that. Obinna was the boss. She was the employee. That line could never be crossed. In the penthouse, Kemi began her usual work, cleaning the kitchen, tidying the rooms, mopping the gleaming floor. But this time she noticed things she had never noticed before. How the refrigerator was almost empty. How there was only one dirty plate in the sink. How there were no photos on the walls. Obinna Ladejo lived in a multi-millionaire penthouse, but lived as if he were in a hotel. Nothing there seemed personal. Nothing there seemed like a home. Kemi, his voice caught her by surprise. She turned quickly, wiping her hands on her apron. Mr. Ladejo, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you arrive. No need to apologize, he said. And there was something different in his voice. Something lighter. I wanted to thank you. Kemi blinked, confused. Thank me for what? For letting Adaora come here. For giving me the chance to know her. Kemi felt her face flush. She lowered her eyes, not knowing what to say. I'm the one who should thank you, sir. You were very kind to her. It's not every day people have patience with a small child. I like her, Obinna admitted. And there was a raw sincerity in that sentence. She's special. She is, Kemi agreed, smiling. She's always been like that, since she was little, full of energy, full of life. Sometimes I'm afraid I can't keep up. You are doing a great job. Anyone can see that. The words hit Kemi in a way she didn't expect. She felt her eyes sting, but blinked quickly to hold back the tears. How long had it been since anyone recognized her effort? How long had it been since anyone said she was doing a good job? Thank you, she whispered, her voice faltering. Obinna took a step forward, hesitant. Kemi, I wanted to ask you a question, and you can say no if you want. I won't be angry. Her heart raced. You can ask, sir, would you like to have dinner here? You and Adaora. It doesn't have to be every week, just once in a while, if you like. Of course, Kemi was breathless. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. To have dinner there with him, that was completely inappropriate. She was the employee, he was the boss. She couldn't accept. But when she looked at Obinna, she saw something in his eyes that made her hesitate. He wasn't trying to take advantage. He wasn't being condescending. He was just lonely, terribly lonely. I don't want to abuse your kindness, sir, Kemi said slowly. And I don't want you to think I'm trying, that I have ulterior motives. I don't think that, Obinna assured. I just want company, that's all, nothing more. Kemi bit her lip, thinking. All the voices in her head screamed to refuse, but her heart, that tired and lonely heart, said something else. All right, she conceded, but only if you let me help prepare the food. I can't just stand by while someone else cooks. Obinna smiled, and it was the first time Kemi saw a genuine smile on his face, a smile that lit up his eyes, that transformed his entire expression. Agreed, he said, and at that moment, they both knew that something had changed, that the invisible line between boss and employee was beginning to blur, and that perhaps, just perhaps, neither of them wanted to keep it in place anymore. Kunle Ladejo was not used to being ignored. As the elder brother and vice president of the family's hotel chain, he had always had control over everything. Always been the responsible one, the one who made the difficult decisions, the one who carried the company on his back, while Obinna hid in his own silence. But in the last 2 weeks something had changed. Obinna was different, more present in meetings, more attentive to details, more alive, and Kunle didn't like that. Changes meant loss of control, and loss of control was unacceptable. Ngozi, He called the secretary as soon as he entered the office that Tuesday morning. "What's happening with my brother?" Ngozi looked up from her careful desk. "How do you mean, Mr. Ladejo? Don't give me that. You've worked for him for 5 years. You know perfectly well what I'm talking about. Obina is different, more animated, almost happy. What changed?" Ngozi hesitated. She was loyal to Obina, but she also knew Kunle well enough to know that lying would only make things worse. "He's been spending more time at home," she said, choosing her words carefully. "Perhaps that's doing him good. Alone? I don't know, sir. I don't follow his personal life." Kunle narrowed his eyes. There was something Ngozi wasn't telling him. He was sure of it, but before he could insist, his phone rang. It was the doorman from Obina's penthouse. "Mr. Ladejo, I'm sorry to bother you, but you asked to be informed if there was any strange activity in Mr. Obina's apartment." Kunle became alert immediately. Sir, a woman and a child have been coming here frequently. They dine with Mr. Obina. Sometimes they stay late. I thought you would want to know." Kunle's blood ran cold. "A woman? Who?" "The cleaner, Mrs. Adebayo, and her daughter." Kunle hung up the phone without another word. Rage rose through his chest like fire. He had always known Obina was naive, but this was beyond all limits. An employee, a cleaner, bringing her daughter into his house, creating intimacy, breaking all the rules of distance and professionalism that Kunle so preached. He left the office, slamming the door. Ngozi tried to call him, but he didn't even look back. He got in his car and drove straight to Obina's penthouse. He wouldn't allow it. He wouldn't let an opportunist destroy everything the family had built. When he arrived, he found the door open. Kemi was in the kitchen preparing dinner with Obina. Adaora was drawing, sitting on the counter, swinging her little legs in the air. The three laughed at something Kunle couldn't quite hear. "Obina," he called, his voice harsh. The three turned at the same time. The smile on Obina's face instantly disappeared. "Kunle, what are you doing here? I came to see with my own eyes what is happening." Kunle replied, entering the kitchen without asking permission. He looked at Kemi with thinly disguised contempt. "So it's true, you're having dinner with the cleaner." Kemi turned pale. She took a step back, pulling Adaora closer to her. "Mr. Ladejo, get out of here," Kunle ordered, pointing to the door. "Now, Kunle, you can't talk to her like that," Obina protested, his voice trembling with contained rage. "I can't? She's an employee. Employees don't dine with their bosses. You know that as well as I do." "She's not just an employee. She's my friend," Kunle laughed, but it was a cold, humorless laugh. "Your friend? Do you really believe that? She's poor, Obina, desperate. She's using you. She's using that child to manipulate you and get money." "That's not true," Kemi cried, tears streaming down her face. "I never asked him for anything. Never." "Of course not," Kunle retorted with sarcasm. "Because smart women don't ask directly. They make you feel special. They make you get attached. And when you realize it, you're giving them everything they want, without even noticing." Obina took a step forward, his fists clenched. "Enough. You know nothing about her. You know nothing about what I feel." "I know you're being foolish," Kunle roared. "I spent years holding this company alone while you hid. Years. And now you show up wanting to play happy family with a cleaner. Do you think I'll allow that?" Adaora began to cry, frightened by the shouting. Kemi picked her up, trembling all over. "We're leaving," she whispered to Obina. "I'm sorry, so very sorry." But before she could leave, Obina held her arm gently. "No, you're not going anywhere." He looked at Kunle with a determination his brother had never seen before. "You are my brother, and I love you, but you will not speak to Kemi like that. You will not humiliate her. You will not drive her away from me, because for the first time in years, I am not alone. For the first time, I have something to live for. And if you cannot accept that, then you are the one who needs to leave." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Kunle looked at Obina as if he didn't recognize him. And perhaps he didn't, because that was no longer the quiet, submissive brother. That was a man who had finally found something worth fighting for. Kunle left, slamming the door, but everyone knew that was far from over. After Kunle left, the penthouse was immersed in a heavy silence. Adaora had stopped crying, but still clung to her mother's neck, her little face hidden in Kemi's shoulder. Obina stood in the middle of the room, taking deep breaths, trying to control the anger that still burned in his chest. "Kemi, I am so sorry," he said for the third time. "My brother had no right to speak to you like that." "It doesn't matter," she replied, but her voice trembled. "He's right. I shouldn't be here. This is wrong. I'm your employee. We crossed a line that shouldn't have been crossed. It's not wrong. What's wrong with having friends? With having company? Kemi looked at him, her eyes full of tears. Everything. When the difference between us is so vast, when people will think I'm taking advantage, when your own brother thinks I'm an opportunist. I don't think that, Obina assured, taking a step towards her. I know who you are. I know how hard you work. I know how much you strive to give Adaora a good life. Nothing my brother said is true. Adaora lifted her head from her mother's shoulder and looked at Obina with eyes red from crying. Is the angry man your brother? She asked in a tiny voice. Yes, Obina confirmed. But don't worry about him. He's scared. Scared of what? Of losing control? Of seeing things change? Adaora thought about it for a moment. Then, with the simple wisdom of a child, she said, Mummy says when you're scared, you need a hug. Your brother needs a hug too. Obina felt his throat tighten. He had spent so much time fighting with Kunle, trying to prove his worth, that he had forgotten that behind all that anger and control was a brother who was also suffering. Perhaps, he admitted. He wiped his own tears and gently placed Adaora on the floor. My dear, go play in the living room for a bit while Mummy talks to Mr. Ladejo, okay? Okay, Adaora agreed. But before leaving, she ran to Obina and hugged his legs tightly. Don't be sad, quiet man. I like you very much. Obina knelt down and hugged the girl back, feeling his eyes burn. I like you very much too. When Adaora left, Kemi and Obina were alone in the kitchen. She leaned against the sink, her shoulders slumped, exhaustion etched on her face. Obina, I need to be honest with you, she began, using his name for the first time. I can't come here anymore. Not like this. Not in this way. Please, don't say that. I need you. Because your brother is right about one thing. This is getting complicated, and I cannot lose this job. It's all I have. If I lose it, Adaora and I will be on the street. Literally. Obina took a step forward, desperate. Then let me help you. Let me pay you a better salary. Let me… No, Kemi cut him off firmly. You don't understand. If you do that, it will look exactly like your brother said, that I'm taking advantage, that I'm using the situation. I don't want your charity, Obina. I don't want to be another charity project. You're not, Obina insisted, his voice hoarse. You never were. You and Adaora. You both gave me something I didn't even know was missing. You gave me hope, made me feel that I'm not alone, and I cannot lose that. I cannot lose you. Kemi closed her eyes, tears now streaming freely. But you will have to lose, because I cannot risk everything I have built. I cannot risk my daughter's future, not for something that cannot work out. Why can't it? Obina asked, and there was an urgency in his voice that startled them both. Why can't two people who care about each other be together? Kemi opened her eyes and looked at him in surprise. You care about me? I care very much, more than I probably should, but I can't help it. You are strong, you are courageous, you are dedicated. You raised an incredible daughter alone. You wake up every day and fight, even when you're exhausted. How could I not care about someone like that? Kemi shook her head, smiling sadly. You barely know me, Obina. I know enough. I know what matters. They stood there facing each other, the distance between them seeming enormous and minuscule at the same time. Kemi wanted to say he was wrong, that it was impossible, that they came from worlds too different. But the truth was that she also cared, also felt that strange and frightening connection, also woke up thinking about him, wondering if he was okay, if he was alone, if he needed someone. What do we do then? She asked, her voice weak. We continue, Obina replied. We don't let my brother or anyone else decide for us. We fight for what's right, for what makes sense, and if it doesn't work out, and if it does, Kemi let out a tearful laugh. She wiped her tears and looked at him with a mixture of fear and hope. You are crazy, you know? I know, Obina admitted, smiling for the first time since Kunle had left. But for the first time in my life, I'm not ashamed to be crazy. I'm ashamed it took me so long to feel this. And at that moment, they both knew there was no turning back, that they had allowed themselves to feel something they could no longer ignore, something big, scary, and true. Kunle did not give up. In the following days, he did everything to separate Kemi and Adaora from Obina. First, he tried to fire her using some excuse about cost-cutting, but Obina found out and prevented it. Then, Kunle tried to convince the other family members that Obina was being manipulated, but no one wanted to get involved in the fight between the two brothers. Desperate, Kunle called an emergency meeting at the company headquarters. He summoned Obina, the family lawyer Barrister Chike Emeka, and 3 other directors. The official agenda was administrative restructuring, but everyone knew it was about Kemi. We need to discuss your recent conduct. Kunle began as soon as everyone sat down. You are jeopardizing the reputation of our company by getting involved with an employee. Obina crossed his arms, tense. I am not involved with anyone. Kemi is my friend, and that is none of the company's business. It is, Kunle retorted. Because if this leaks to the press, they will say that we exploit employees, that we use our position of power to relate to vulnerable people. That's ridiculous. I have never used my position for anything. And Kemi is not vulnerable. She is an independent and capable woman. Barrister Emeka cleared his throat uncomfortably. With all due respect, Mr. Ladejo, your brother has a point. Appearances matter, and a relationship between an employer and an employee always raises questions. It's not a relationship, Obina repeated, but his voice was losing its firmness. Then what is it? Kunle pressed. Why does she dine at your house? Why do you let her daughter into your penthouse? Why are you behaving as if she were part of your life? Obina opened his mouth to answer, but couldn't, because the truth was he no longer knew what to answer. Kemi and Adaora were part of his life. They were the best part. And he no longer wanted to pretend otherwise. Because I care about them, he admitted, and his voice echoed through the meeting room. Because they make me happy. Because for the first time in years I have something to live for beyond this damned company. The silence was absolute. Everyone looked at Obina as if he had gone mad, except Kunle. Kunle looked at him with something close to pity. You don't see it, Kunle said softly. You are clinging to them because you are alone, because you are desperate for connection. But this isn't real, Obina. This isn't love. It's just need. So what if it is? Obina exploded, standing from his chair. So what if I'm alone? So what if I need them? Why is that so wrong? Why can't I have someone who truly cares about me? Because she doesn't care, Kunle shouted back, also standing. She cares about the money, about the security, about the better future you can give her daughter. But not about you, never about you. The words hit Obina like knives. He knew they weren't true. He knew Kemi wasn't like that. But a small part of him, that part that had been rejected so many times, began to doubt. You don't know her, he said, but his voice came out weak. And do you know her? Kunle challenged. Truly? Or are you just seeing what you want to see? Obina didn't answer. He couldn't, because suddenly all the insecurities he had buried deep returned to the surface. What if Kunle was right? What if Kemi was just being polite? What if she was enduring his presence, just so she wouldn't lose her job? Barrister, Emeka tried to intervene. Gentlemen, let's calm down. I'm sure we can resolve this civilly. But Kunle was not interested in being civil. He was interested in winning, in proving he was right, in maintaining the control he had always had over his brother's life. Obina, I'm going to give you a choice, he said, his voice cold. Either you end this involvement with the cleaner, or I will go to the board and ask to remove you from the presidency, and you know I can get the votes. You know they will agree with me. Obina was paralyzed. The company presidency was all he had. It was the only thing that proved he was capable, that he had value. If Kunle took that from him, what would be left? You wouldn't do that, he said, but he knew it was a lie. I would, Kunle guaranteed, because I am trying to protect you from yourself, from a woman who will destroy you, from a future that will make you suffer even more than you already have. Obina looked at his brother and saw something he had never seen before. It wasn't just anger. It wasn't just control. It was pain. Kunle was afraid of losing his brother, afraid of seeing Obina get hurt again, afraid of no longer being needed. Kunle, Obina said slowly, I understand you are worried. I understand you want to protect me, but you cannot live my life for me. You cannot decide who I can or cannot have near me, because if you continue like this, you will not protect me. You will lose me. Kunle turned pale. So you choose her? Obina took a deep breath and replied, I choose them. After the disastrous meeting, Obina returned home exhausted. He had faced Kunle, he had defended Kemi, but doubt still gnawed within him. What if his brother was right? What if he was deluding himself? Kemi was in the penthouse finishing the cleaning. Adaora was drawing, sitting on the living room floor. When they saw Obina enter, both smiled, but the smile died when they noticed the expression on his face. What happened? Kemi asked, dropping the floor cloth. Nothing, Obina lied. Just a difficult day at work. But Kemi knew lies. She had lived long enough to recognize them from afar. Obina, please tell me. He looked at her and felt his chest tighten. How to explain that he was scared? How to admit that all his insecurities had returned? My brother gave me an ultimatum, he confessed. Either I stop having you both in my life, or he removes me from the presidency. Kemi turned pale. Then you need to fire me. What? No, You don't need to, Obina. I won't let you lose everything because of me. I won't be the cause of your ruin. You are not my ruin, he protested. You are the opposite of that. But your brother doesn't see it that way, and if you lose the company, you will end up blaming me, you will end up regretting it, and I can't bear the thought of you looking at me with resentment. Obina took a step forward, desperate. I would never do that. Never. You don't know, she said, and there were tears in her eyes. No one knows how they will react until they lose everything. Adaora, who had been quiet until then, got up from the floor and walked to the two of them. She held Obina's hand and her mother's hand, joining the two. Stop fighting, she pleaded in a tiny voice. You two are friends. Friends don't fight. Obina looked at the girl and felt something break inside him. Adaora was right. They weren't enemies. They weren't problems for each other. They were solutions. They were the answer neither of them knew they were looking for. Kemi, he said, holding her hand tightly, I know it's scary. I know it seems impossible. But I don't want to give up. Not on you. Not on Adaora. Not on what we are building here. But your brother and the company, I will find a way. I will talk to him again. I will make him understand, but I will not give up on you, because you are too important. Kemi looked at him, her eyes full of tears. If it doesn't work out, then we try again, and again until it does. She let out a tearful laugh. You're stubborn, aren't you? I am, Obina admitted, smiling. I learned from the best. That night, the three had dinner together, as they always did. But this time, there was something different in the air. A certainty, a decision. They would not give up. They would not let Kunle or anyone else destroy what they had, because what they had was real. It was true. It was love. Kunle did not stop. He pressured the board, spread rumors, did everything to force Obina to choose between the company and Kemi. And finally, on a cold August morning, Obina received official notification. Either he ended the relationship with the employee, or he would be removed from the presidency for 60 days for a conduct review. Kemi found out through Ngozi, who called her desperate. He's not telling you, but it's happening. Kunle is winning, and Obina is about to lose everything. Kemi hung up the phone, her hands trembling. She looked at Adaora, who was playing on the floor of their cramped apartment, and made the most difficult decision of her life. She was leaving. She was going to leave Obina's life before he lost everything because of her. She wrote a short, direct, painful letter. She explained that she couldn't be the reason for his destruction, that he deserved more, that she would always remember the time they spent together. And then, on a Thursday afternoon, she took Adaora's hand and left the penthouse for the last time. Obina arrived home 2 hours later and found the letter on the table. He read it once, twice, 3 times, and with each word, he felt his heart break. She had left, she had given up, she had chosen to protect him instead of fighting by his side, and he could not allow that. Obina grabbed his car keys and ran out. He knew the address. Ngozi had given it to him weeks ago, just in case. He drove like a madman to the modest flat, his heart racing, his mind screaming that he couldn't lose that. He couldn't lose them. When he arrived at the humble building, he climbed the flights of stairs 2 by 2. He knocked hard on the apartment door. Kemi opened it, surprised and startled. Obina, what are you doing here? Don't do this, he pleaded, not caring that he was out of breath, sweaty, desperate. Please, don't leave. I need you. You know I need you. No, you don't. We'll find another way. We don't have another way, Kemi cried. You're going to lose everything, Obina, and I can't live with that guilt. Then let me decide. Let me choose, because I have already chosen. I choose you. I will always choose you. Adaora appeared behind her mother, her little eyes wide. Quiet, man. Obina knelt down to be at the girl's height. Hello, Adaora, did you come to visit us? I came because I missed you. Adaora took a step forward, hesitant. Then she asked the simplest and most devastating thing in the world. You can be my papa? The silence that followed was absolute. Kemi put her hand to her mouth, her eyes wide. Obina felt tears stream down his face, unable to hold them back. Adaora, my dear, Kemi began but couldn't finish. You can? The girl insisted, looking at Obina with pure hope. I always wanted a papa, and you are nice. You listen when I talk. You like me? So, can you? Obina pulled the girl into a tight hug, sobbing. I can? Of course, I can. Kemi fell to her knees, crying too. And there, in that small, cramped apartment, the three hugged as if they were the only real thing in the world, because they were. Obina confronted Kunle the next day. He said he would resign from the presidency if necessary, that he would give up everything for the chance to have a family. Kunle tried to argue, tried to convince, tried to control, but when he saw his brother's determined look, he finally understood. He understood that he had lost, not because Obinna had chosen Kemi, but because Obinna had chosen to be happy. Months later, on a random November night, the three had dinner together in the penthouse. Adaora's pink lunchbox was on the table, next to Obinna's plate. Kemi smiled as she talked about her day. Adaora showed off her new drawings, and Obinna, for the first time in 42 years, was no longer alone. He had sound, he had color, he had meaning, he had a family, his family. So, what did you think of the story? Leave your opinion in the comments. We love to know what you think. Don't forget to like the video to support us and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. Millionaire Tayo Balogun had lost everything: his money, his sleep, his hope. And that morning, when he finally accepted that there was no way out, a child who had nothing but a crayon and a pure heart entered the most inaccessible room of that building and, unknowingly, gave the bankrupt millionaire exactly what he needed most. And no one, not even he, was prepared for it. Our stories have traveled far. Where are you watching from today? Share with us in the comments. Tayo Balogun was less than 15 minutes away from signing the document that would destroy everything his family had built in 3 generations. The pen was there, on the mahogany table, on the 4th floor of Balogun Towers, waiting only for him to have the courage to end the empire. "Mr. Balogun, we need your signature now," said Barrister Segun Adeyemi, the company's chief lawyer, adjusting his glasses with impatience. "The press is in the lobby. We cannot delay any longer." Tayo looked at the ceiling, trying to contain the despair rising in his throat. 38 years of life, and everything crumbling in a matter of months. The hotels empty, debts accumulated, employees unpaid. He had failed everyone. "How many people will lose their jobs?" he asked, his voice weaker than he would have liked. Barrister Adeyemi sighed, flipping through the papers. 3,200 direct employees. If we count the outsourced staff, more than 5,000 families will be affected. 5,000 families. The number weighed like concrete on Tayo's shoulders. He thought of his grandfather, who started with a small hotel in Balogun Market and turned it into a luxury chain. He thought of his father, who expanded to Victoria Island and Ikoyi. And now he, the heir who had promised to continue the legacy, was about to throw everything away. "Tayo, are you all right?" asked Mr. Femi Oladele, the accountant, noticing his boss's pallor. "I am," Tayo lied, running a hand over his tired face. He hadn't slept well for weeks, hadn't eaten well, hadn't lived well. Across the table, Mr. Bayo Davies, his partner for 10 years, remained silent. "Bayo, are you sure there's no other way out?" Tayo insisted, a last spark of hope shining in his chest. Bayo threw his hands up in a gesture of surrender. "Tayo, I've reviewed the numbers dozens of times. We are buried in debt. Zuma Global Group is willing to take over everything, but only if we sign today. Tomorrow the offer expires. The offer to sell Balogun Hotels for a ridiculous amount to an international conglomerate that would turn his hotels into just another soulless brand." Tayo picked up the pen, his hands trembled. "Mr. Balogun, I need to use the restroom quickly," said Chidinma Eze, the executive secretary, rising from her chair in the corner of the room. She left in a hurry, and Tayo noticed she was crying. Chidinma had worked there for 8 years, had 2 small children. How would he look at her after signing that? "Let's get this over with," Barrister Adeyemi pressed, tapping his finger on the table. Tayo brought the pen to the paper. The tip touched the dotted line. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a second, and began to trace the first letter of his name. It was at that moment that the meeting room door opened. Everyone turned their heads at the same time. But it wasn't Chidinma returning. It was a child. A small girl, with curly brown hair and curious eyes, walked in slowly, holding a crumpled paper in her hands. She couldn't have been more than 3 years old. She wore simple clothes and looked at everyone with that innocence that only children have. "What is this?" Bayo muttered, turning abruptly in his chair. The girl didn't answer. She kept walking, her small steps echoing in the tense silence of the room. Tayo dropped the pen, watching the scene without understanding anything. "Who let a child in here?" Barrister Adeyemi asked, irritated. But the girl didn't stop. She went straight to Tayo, stopped in front of him, and stretched out her arm, offering the crumpled paper. Tayo looked down, confused. "For me?" he asked in a soft voice. The girl nodded, confirming. Tayo took the paper carefully, feeling its rough texture. He began to open it, smoothing out the folds. "This is ridiculous," Bayo grumbled, standing up. "I'll call security." "Wait," Tayo said, raising his hand. He finished opening the paper and looked at what appeared to be a child's drawing. There was a yellow sun in the corner, a crooked heart in the middle, a purple flower on the side, crayons, trembling lines, pure innocence. But then, beneath the drawings, Tayo saw something that made his heart stop. Numbers, columns of printed numbers, partially covered by the scribbles, but still visible. He tilted the paper to the light, brought his eyes closer, and read the first line. And what he saw made all the air leave his lungs. "My God," he whispered. "What is it?" asked Femi, also standing. Tayo couldn't answer. His eyes scanned the lines, mentally comparing them with the numbers he had just almost signed. Something was wrong, very wrong. While Tayo faced the collapse of his empire on the 4th floor, 60 meters below, in the basement of Balogun Towers, Mercy Obi wrung out the floor cloth for the 10th time that morning. Her hands were rough, red, sore, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Every movement was a struggle to keep the little she had, to ensure Chioma had at least the basics. "Mummy, I just finished drawing." Chioma's tiny voice called from the cleaning supply room at the end of the corridor. Mercy smiled, even with the fatigue weighing on every muscle. "That's lovely, my love. Let me finish here, and I'll come see." She plunged the cloth into the bucket of dirty water and continued scrubbing the cold floor. The Balogun Towers was immense, and she was responsible for 3 entire floors. She arrived at 5 a.m. and left at 7 p.m., earning little more than a minimum wage, which had been delayed lately. "Mercy, did you see the memo?" asked Malam Garba, the maintenance chief, appearing in the corridor with a heavy expression. She stopped scrubbing and looked at him. "What memo?" Malam Garba hesitated, scratching the back of his neck. "They're saying the company is closing, that everyone will be laid off." Mercy felt the floor drop beneath her feet. She dropped the cloth, wiped her hands on her apron, and took a deep breath, trying not to panic. "Are you sure? That's what they're saying upstairs. Meeting on the top floor, lawyers, paperwork, all that." Mercy leaned against the wall, feeling her legs weaken. If she lost this job, how would she pay the rent? How would she buy food? Chioma needed medicine, diapers, milk. "Malam Garba, I can't lose this job." Her voice broke. "I have nowhere to go." He put a hand on her shoulder, sympathetic. "I know, Mercy. We're all in the same boat. But let's hope it's just a rumor." He walked away, and Mercy stayed there alone in the cold corridor, trying to hold back the tears. She couldn't cry, not in front of Chioma. The girl had already been through so much. Mercy thought of Chioma's father, who disappeared when he found out about the pregnancy. She thought of her own mother, who had passed away 2 years ago. She thought of her sister, who lived far away and could barely support herself. She was alone, completely alone. "Mummy." Chioma called again, this time closer. Mercy turned and saw her daughter running down the corridor, her bare feet pattering on the floor. "Chioma, I told you to stay in the supply room," she reprimanded, but without strength in her voice. "But I found a nice paper," the girl said, holding a crumpled paper. "Look, it was in the waste bin there." Mercy looked at the paper, then at the executive waste bin at the end of the corridor. That area was restricted, but sometimes Chioma ventured in when she got bored. "Chioma, you can't pick up trash, my dear." "But it was clean," the girl insisted, opening the paper on the floor. "I'm going to draw on it." Mercy sighed, picking up the bucket again. She didn't have the energy to argue. If Chioma wanted to draw on a piece of waste paper, let her. At least it kept her occupied. "All right, but stay close to me, okay?" "Okay." Chioma sat on the floor, took the old crayons Mercy had found in a church donation, and began to scribble. Mercy returned to work, scrubbing the corridor hard, trying not to think about the possibility of losing everything. She looked at Chioma from time to time, seeing the girl concentrated on her drawings, her tongue sticking out, her little eyes shining. "Mummy, look, a butterfly," Chioma suddenly said, standing up. "What butterfly, Chioma?" "Wait," but the girl had already run off, paper in hand, following the butterfly that had entered through the half-open executive wing door. "Chioma, come back here." Mercy dropped the cloth and ran after her daughter, her heart pounding. She couldn't let Chioma go upstairs. If anyone saw the girl there, Mercy would be fired on the spot. And now, with the company about to go bankrupt, any mistake would be fatal. "Chioma, please," she begged, climbing the service stairs behind her daughter. But Chioma was fast, and Mercy was too tired to catch her. She saw the girl push the door to the 4th floor and enter. "No, no, no," Mercy whispered, feeling panic take over. She pushed the door open too and entered the luxurious corridor with soft carpet and glass walls. She had never been up there before. That was the world of executives, of the rich, of important people. And Chioma was walking straight to the main meeting room. "Chioma," Mercy called, but her voice came out low, choked by fear. She saw her daughter push the meeting room door and enter. Mercy ran, her heart beating so hard it felt like it would burst from her mouth. She reached the door and saw Chioma handing the paper to a man in a dark suit, sitting at the head of an enormous table. "Excuse me, sir. I am so sorry," Mercy began, entering the room breathless. "She's just a child. She didn't mean to disturb you, I swear that." But the man wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the paper, and the expression on his face was pure shock. Bio Davies watched the scene with growing irritation. That dirty child, coming from goodness knows where, had just interrupted the most important moment of his life. "I'll call security," he said, picking up the phone from the table. But Tayo raised his hand, silencing him. "Wait." Bio put the phone down hard, annoyed. He looked at the paper Tayo was holding, trying to see what had caught so much attention, but from where he sat, he could only see childish scribbles. "Tayo, this is ridiculous," he insisted, forcing a polite smile. "Let's continue. We have deadlines. Where did you get this?" Tayo asked the child, ignoring Bio completely. The girl pointed to her mother, who stood at the door, pale with fear. "My mummy works here." Tayo finally looked at the woman. She was young, thin, in simple clothes, and her hands were visibly bruised from hard work. He recognized the cleaner's uniform. "What's your name?" Tayo asked, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Mercy, sir. Mercy Obi. I'm so sorry. She didn't mean to." "No need to apologize," Tayo interrupted, standing up from his chair. "Where did your daughter find this?" Mercy swallowed hard, looking at Chioma. She said she found it in the executive corridor's waste bin. "I work on the lower floors, but sometimes she stays with me because I couldn't get a crash space." "In the waste bin?" Tayo repeated, turning slowly to Bayo. Bayo felt his stomach tighten. No, it couldn't be. He was sure he had thrown that spreadsheet into a discreet waste bin, far from any circulation area. How had a child found it? "Tayo, what's going on?" Barrister Adeyemi asked, confused. Tayo didn't answer. He returned to the table, picked up the document he was about to sign, and placed it side by side with the crumpled paper. His eyes moved quickly between the two, comparing numbers, dates, values, and then he saw it. The official document showed a debt of 43 million naira to international suppliers, with no possibility of renegotiation. But the paper the child had brought, partially covered in crayon, showed only 18 million, with already renegotiated contracts and extended deadlines. "This isn't right," Tayo said, his voice cold and controlled. "What's not right?" Femi, the accountant, asked, standing up to get a better look. Tayo pointed to the two spreadsheets. "This one says we owe 43 million, but this spreadsheet here that someone threw in the trash says 18. A heavy silence fell over the room. Bayo felt sweat start to trickle down his back. He needed to think fast. "Tayo, this must be an old printout," he said, forcing calm into his voice. "Probably from months ago, before the situation worsened." "The date here is 3 days ago," Tayo retorted, pointing to the paper's header. 3 days, Bayo." Femi approached, took the spreadsheet from Tayo's hands, and began to analyze it carefully. His eyes widened. "Mr. Balogun, these numbers are completely different from what I received for analysis." "How different?" Barrister Adeyemi asked, now also standing. "The supply contracts here were renegotiated. The interest rates were reduced. There's even an approved credit line that I've never seen before." Tayo turned to Bayo. "Did you give me these numbers?" Bayo felt all eyes turn to him. He needed to get out of this. He needed to invent something fast. "Tayo, you're tired, stressed. This spreadsheet could be anything. A printing error, a corrupted file. Or it could be the truth," Tayo interrupted, his voice cutting. "And the document I was about to sign is a lie." Bayo forced a laugh, trying to ease the tension. "Are you suggesting I lied to you? We've been partners for 10 years, Tayo. I built this company with you." "Then explain this," Tayo said, throwing the two spreadsheets in front of Bayo. "Explain why the numbers are completely different. Explain why this spreadsheet was in the trash." Bayo looked at the papers, then at Tayo, then at the others in the room. Everyone waited for an answer. "I don't know how to explain," he finally said, crossing his arms. "But accusing someone without proof is irresponsible." "Proof?" Tayo repeated, picking up the phone from the table. "Then let's find proof." He dialed an internal number and waited. Someone answered on the other end. "Chidinma, I need you to access the server and send me all versions of the financial spreadsheets from the last 3 months. All of them, including the ones that were deleted. Now, Bayo felt panic rising. If Chidinma accessed the server, she would find the altered versions. She would find the emails he had exchanged with Zuma Global Group. She would find everything. Tayo, this is madness, he tried to argue, but his voice came out too tense. Tayo hung up the phone and looked directly at him. If you have nothing to hide, you have no reason to worry. Bayo opened his mouth to reply, but nothing came out. He looked at the child, still standing beside her mother, holding a yellow crayon in her hand. That child had just destroyed everything. Chioma didn't understand why everyone was so serious. She just wanted to show her drawing. But now the man in the suit seemed angry, and her mummy had that scared look she knew so well. "Mummy, did I do something wrong?" she asked softly, pulling at Mercy's worn skirt. "No, my love. Just stay quiet," Mercy replied, her voice trembling. She couldn't stop looking at the men around the table. They all seemed important, with expensive suits and shiny watches, and she was there, in her stained uniform and hands dirty from scrubbing floors. "Mercy, is this true?" Tayo asked, turning to her. "Your daughter found this paper in the waste bin." "Yes, sir. She likes to draw and sometimes picks up old papers. I didn't know it was important, I swear." "Don't worry," Tayo said with a gentleness that surprised Mercy. "You didn't do anything wrong. On the contrary." Mercy didn't understand what he meant, but she nodded, holding Chioma more tightly. The door opened, and Chidinma entered, carrying a notebook. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. She placed the computer on the table, opened a file, and turned the screen to Tayo. "Mr. Balogun, here are all versions of the spreadsheets from the last 3 months, both active and deleted." Tayo began to scroll through the screen, clicking, opening, comparing. Mercy watched from a distance, not understanding any of the numbers and graphs. But she noticed when Tayo's expression changed, from confused to incredulous, from incredulous to furious. "My God," he murmured, moving away from the computer as if he had seen something terrible. "What is it?" Femi asked, approaching. Tayo pointed to the screen. "There are 2 versions of each spreadsheet, one true and one false, and the false ones were sent only to me and Barrister Adeyemi. The true ones remained archived, but were never presented in meetings." "That's impossible," Barrister Adeyemi said, leaning in to get a better look. "Who would have access to do that?" Tayo turned slowly to Bayo, and everyone else did the same. "Only I and Bayo have full access to the financial server," Tayo said, his voice low and dangerous. "Only us two." Bayo raised his hands, trying to appear calm. "Tayo, are you implying that I sabotaged my own company? Why? For what reason?" "I don't know," Tayo replied, taking a step towards him. "But I will find out." He went back to the computer and began opening emails. Mercy saw when he stopped at one, his eyes fixed on the screen. He clicked, read, and became completely motionless. "You were negotiating with Zuma Global Group behind my back," Tayo said, his voice icy. Bayo opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "There are emails here from 6 months ago. You offered them our company for 25 million, 1/3 of the real value." "Tayo, I can explain." "Explain then," Tayo interrupted, crossing his arms. "Explain why you are trying to make me sign the bankruptcy of a company that is still healthy. Explain why you manipulated numbers. Explain why you were selling everything behind my back." Bayo remained silent. His face was red, and he was visibly sweating now. He looked around, seeking support, but everyone stared at him with contempt. "You don't understand," he finally said, his voice low. "This company was sinking anyway. I just accelerated the inevitable." "Sinking?" Tayo repeated, disbelieving. "The real numbers show that we are doing well. We have positive cash flow, renegotiated contracts, approved credit lines. We are not sinking. We never were." "You are naive," Bayo replied, his composure finally breaking. "Do you think you can compete with giants like Zuma? They will crush us anyway. I just made sure we walked away with something." "Walked away?" Tayo gave a bitter laugh. "Or that you walked away with something." Bayo didn't reply. He just looked away, his jaw clenched. Tayo picked up the phone again and dialed. "Security, I need you to come up to the main meeting room immediately. Bring the police too." Mercy felt Chioma shrink beside her. The girl didn't like angry people. She bent down and picked her daughter up, trying to shield her from all the tension. "You can't do this," Bayo said, standing up quickly. "I am a partner in this company. You don't have the authority to." "I own 51% of the shares," Tayo interrupted. "And you just admitted sabotage and fraud. So, yes, I can." The door opened, and 2 security guards entered. followed by a police officer. Bayo looked at them, then at Tayo, and something in him gave way. "You will regret this," he said, his voice full of venom. "The only one who will regret it here is you," Tayo replied. The security guards approached Bayo, and he did not resist. He let them lead him away, but not before casting one last hateful glance at Chioma. Mercy felt a shiver. She held her daughter tighter to her chest, wishing she could disappear from there. When Bayo finally left, the room fell silent. No one knew what to say. Tayo returned to his chair and sat down, running his hands over his face. "Mr. Balogun," Mercy began, her voice low. "Can I leave now?" Tayo looked at her as if he had forgotten she was still there. "No," he said, and Mercy felt her heart sink. "Don't leave yet." She waited, holding Chioma, prepared for the worst. But what Tayo said next was something she would never have expected to hear. "Please sit," Tayo said, pointing to one of the chairs around the table. Mercy looked at the upholstered leather chair as if it were forbidden. She had never sat in such a chair, had never even stepped into that room before that day. I can't, sir. I need to get back to work." "Sit," Tayo repeated, this time more firmly, but still gently. "Please." Mercy hesitated, then walked slowly to the chair and sat on the edge, as if ready to run away at any moment. Chioma remained on her lap, clinging to her mother's neck. Tayo pulled a chair and sat in front of her, at Mercy's eye level. He took a deep breath before speaking. "Do you have any idea what your daughter just did?" Mercy shook her head, tears starting to sting her eyes. "I'm so sorry if she disturbed you. She's just a child. She doesn't know anything. She saved this company," Tayo interrupted. Mercy stopped speaking, confused. "What? Your daughter saved this company," Tayo repeated, pointing to the crumpled paper still on the table. "If she hadn't picked up that paper, I would have signed the bankruptcy right now. 5,000 people would have lost their jobs, including you." Mercy felt the tears finally fall. She didn't know if she was crying from relief, fear, or shock. Perhaps it was all of them combined. "So, then we won't be laid off?" "No," Tayo replied, smiling for the first time since everything had begun. "No one will be laid off. On the contrary, we will grow." Mercy covered her face with her hands, sobbing. Chioma got scared and started stroking her mother's hair. "Don't cry, Mummy. Is everything okay?" Tayo stood up and got a glass of water, offering it to Mercy. She accepted it with trembling hands and drank in short sips, trying to calm down. "Mercy, how long have you worked here?" Tayo asked, sitting down again. 5 years, sir." 5 years, he repeated thoughtfully, "and I never knew your name until today." Mercy lowered her eyes, ashamed. "I'm a cleaner. I don't expect bosses to know who I am." "That will change," Tayo said, his voice firm. "From today onwards, everything will change." He turned to Chidinma, who was still there watching everything with tear-filled eyes. "Chidinma, write down her full name, Mercy Obi, and her daughter's name too, Chioma," Mercy added softly. "Chioma Obi." Chidinma quickly noted it on her notebook. "Mercy, do you have any education? What's your highest level of schooling?" Tayo asked. "I finished secondary school, sir. I wanted to go to university, but..." She looked at Chioma. "Things didn't work out. What if I offered you a full scholarship?" Tayo asked, leaning forward. "Any course you want. Administration, accounting, whatever." Mercy's eyes widened. "Sir, I can't accept that. I don't deserve it." "You deserve it," Tayo interrupted. "Your daughter saved my company. That's worth more than anything I can offer you, but I will try." He paused, thinking, "Besides the scholarship, I will transfer you to the administrative department. Your salary will be 3 times higher, with regular office hours, so you can take care of Chioma. And I will arrange for her to have a spot in the best creche in the area, all paid for by the company." Mercy couldn't believe what she was hearing. She looked at Chioma, then at Tayo, then at Chidinma, as if expecting someone to say it was a lie. "Mr. Balogun, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Tayo replied, smiling. "Just accept." Mercy nodded, crying again, but this time it was tears of happiness. Tayo stood up and picked up the crumpled paper with Chioma's drawings. He looked at the yellow sun, the crooked heart, the purple flower. Then he looked at the girl, who was now smiling at him. "Can I keep this drawing?" he asked Chioma. The girl nodded, excited. "Yes, I'll make another one later." Tayo carefully put away the paper, as if it were the most valuable thing in the world. "This drawing will be framed in my office, so I never forget what almost happened, and never forget who saved me." Mercy wiped her tears and smiled. For the first time in years, she felt hope. The news of Biodevi's sabotage spread through Balogun Towers like wildfire. In less than 2 hours, all employees knew that the company would not close, that the partner had been removed, and that a 3-year-old child had saved thousands of jobs. In the basement, Malam Garba was the first to tell the maintenance team. "Guys, you won't believe what happened," he said, gathering everyone around a grease-stained workbench. Mercy's daughter found a fake spreadsheet, and Tayo discovered that Bio was trying to steal the company. "Chioma?" one of the young men asked. "Mercy's little girl, the very same," Malam Garba confirmed, smiling. She picked up a paper from the trash, drew on it, and gave it to Tayo just as he was about to sign the bankruptcy papers. Everyone was silent, processing the information. Then, one of them started to laugh, another clapped. In seconds, everyone was celebrating. On the 20th floor, Baba Ayo, the old doorman, cried when he heard the news. He had known Mercy since she started working there and had watched Chioma grow up. Many times he would save old sweets from the cafeteria to give to the girl. "This girl is an angel," he said to the receptionist, wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. "I always knew she was special." Meanwhile, on the 4th floor, Tayo was in his office, looking out the glass window that overlooked Lagos City. He held Chioma's drawing in his hands, still trying to process everything that had happened. The door opened and Femi entered, carrying a folder full of documents. "Tayo, I've reviewed everything. The company is healthy, very healthy in fact. Bio hid renegotiated contracts, approved credit lines, and even interested investors. If you had signed that bankruptcy, you would have thrown away a company valued at over 200 million naira. Tayo closed his eyes, feeling the weight of those words. 200 million naira. Yes, he was going to sell it for 25 million to Zuma Global Group and pocket a millionaire commission. It was a coup planned for months. Tayo turned, facing Femi. "And you didn't notice anything?" Femi lowered his head, embarrassed. "I was suspicious a few times. The numbers didn't quite add up, but Bio always had an explanation. And I believed him. I believed him too," Tayo said, sighing. "He was my partner for 10 years. I trusted him." Femi placed the folder on the table and pointed to the documents. "Here is everything we need to rebuild investor confidence. And there's more. Zuma Global Group is being investigated for attempted fraudulent acquisition. They knew about the coup and were participating." "Good," Tayo said, satisfied. "I want them to pay for this." He picked up the phone and called the press team. "Schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning. I want all the major newspapers here, and prepare an official statement. Balogun hotels will not close. We are stronger than ever." As he hung up, the door opened again. This time it was Chidinma with a worried expression. "Mr. Balogun, there's a reporter downstairs asking to speak with you. She said she already knows everything and wants an exclusive interview." Tayo thought for a moment. "Who is it?" "Bimpe Akande, from National Network News." Tayo knew the name. Bimpe was known for investigative reports and for not being afraid to expose corporate scandals. "Send her up." 10 minutes later, Bimpe Akande was sitting in front of Tayo, recorder on, notepad in hand. She was young, determined, and her eyes sparkled with the excitement of someone who had found a great story. "Mr. Balogun, is it true that a 3-year-old child saved your company?" Tayo smiled. "It's true." "How did this happen?" Tayo told everything from the moment he was about to sign the bankruptcy to Chioma's entry into the room, the crumpled drawing, the discovery of the sabotage, and Bio's removal. Bimpe scribbled frantically, stopping only to ask specific questions. "And the child's mother? Who is she?" "Mercy Obi, a cleaner who has worked here for 5 years, an honest, hard-working woman who raises her daughter alone on a minimum wage." "And what do you intend to do for her?" "I already have," Tayo replied. "I transferred her to the administrative department, tripled her salary, offered a full scholarship, and a place in a private creche for her daughter." Bimpe stopped writing and looked at Tayo with admiration. "That's rare to see these days." "It should be normal," Tayo said. "Mercy and Chioma reminded me of something I had forgotten, that behind every number, every report, every decision, there are real people, real families, and it is for them that this company exists." Bimpe smiled and closed her notepad. "Can I publish this?" "You can, and use their names. Mercy and Chioma Obi deserve to be recognized." The next day, Bimpe Akande's article was on the front page of all the country's newspapers. The title read, "The Crayon Girl. How a 3-year-old child saved 5,000 jobs and uncovered a millionaire's scheme." Mercy didn't know how to handle so much attention. Suddenly, she, who had always been invisible, was being recognized everywhere. Employees stopped to greet her in the corridors. People asked to take photos with Chioma. Reporters called asking for interviews. "Mummy, why does everyone want to talk to me?" Chioma asked, confused, as they walked through the hotel lobby. "Because you did something very special, my love," Mercy replied, squeezing her daughter's hand. "I just drew." "I know, but sometimes the simplest things are the most important." They arrived at Mercy's new office on the 15th floor. It was a small room, but it had a window, her own desk, and a computer. Mercy still couldn't believe it was hers. "Do you like it?" Chidinma asked, who was waiting there to help her on her first day. "It's perfect," Mercy replied, her eyes shining. "Your hours are now 9 to 5. You'll be working with inventory control and suppliers. It's easy, and you'll learn quickly." Mercy nodded, still a little lost. She barely knew how to use a computer properly, but she would learn. She needed to learn. Chioma went to her new creche that same morning. It was a colorful place, with new toys, attentive teachers, and real food for lunch. When Mercy picked her up at the end of the day, Chioma was radiant. "Mummy, I made friends, and the teacher said I draw very well." Mercy smiled, feeling her heart warm. For the first time, Chioma would have a real childhood. Weeks passed, and Mercy's life changed completely. She began attending evening administration classes at the university Tayo had paid for. She managed to rent a better apartment, with 2 bedrooms and a window in the living room. She bought new clothes, not because she needed to impress anyone, but because she finally could. And Tayo was always around. At first, Mercy thought it was just gratitude. He would stop by her office to ask if everything was okay. He would come down to have lunch with her and Chioma. He would ask about university, about her adjustment to the new job, about how Chioma was doing at the creche. But then, one day, he appeared with a different invitation. "Mercy, there's a new hotel opening at Obudu Cattle Ranch next weekend. I wanted to know if you and Chioma would like to come with me." Mercy was speechless. "Mr. Balogun, I don't think that." "And call me Tayo," he interrupted, smiling. "And it's not an obligation, it's an invitation. I thought Chioma would like to see the beautiful landscape." Chioma, who was drawing beside her mother, jumped from her chair. "Obudu? I will see Obudu for real," Tayo laughed. "Yes, you will, and you can bring your crayons to draw there." Mercy looked at her daughter, then at Tayo, and for the first time allowed herself to think that perhaps it was more than just gratitude. "All right, we'll go." The weekend at Obudu Cattle Ranch was magical. Chioma ran around the hills, made mud figures, drew on the mist-covered window of the room, and Mercy, for the first time in years, relaxed. She talked to Tayo about things that had nothing to do with work, about dreams, about childhood, about life. "You are incredible, you know," Tayo said while having hot chocolate on the hotel balcony, watching Chioma play below. Mercy blushed. "I'm not incredible. I'm just a mother trying to do her best for her daughter." "Exactly," Tayo replied. "You worked double, raised Chioma alone, never gave up. That is being incredible." Mercy smiled, feeling something stir within her chest. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. When they returned to Lagos, Tayo started showing up even more. He would take Chioma for ice cream. He would help Mercy with her university lessons, go with her to the girls' school meetings, and people started to notice. Comments began to surface in the corridors. Curious glances, discreet gossip. "Do you think they're together?" one employee asked another in the elevator. "I don't know, but they spend a lot of time together." Mercy heard and pretended not to care. But inside, she also wondered, what was happening between her and Tayo? Was it friendship, gratitude, or was it something more? The answer came on a Thursday night, 3 months after Chioma had saved the company. Tayo appeared at Mercy's apartment with flowers in his hand and a nervous smile on his face. "May I come in?" "Of course," Mercy said, confused. Chioma was asleep. The living room was silent. Tayo handed her the flowers and took a deep breath. "Mercy, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" He hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "I like you very much. And it's not gratitude. It's not pity. It's real." Mercy felt her heart accelerate. "Tayo, I know I'm your boss. I know this complicates everything, but I can no longer pretend I feel nothing." Mercy looked at him, at that man who had changed her life, who treated her daughter as if she were his own, who made her feel seen, valued, loved. And then, without much thought, she moved closer and kissed him. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "Does that mean you like me too?" Tayo asked hopefully. "It means I'm willing to try," Mercy replied. And that's how it began. Slowly, carefully, but with a lot of feeling. The announcement of an emergency press conference by Balogun Hotels mobilized all the major media outlets in the country. Reporters, photographers, and cameras filled the main auditorium of Balogun Towers, all curious to know what Tayo Balogun had to say. Bimpe Akande was in the front row, notepad in hand, ready to record everything. Tayo walked onto the stage accompanied by Mercy and Chioma. The girl held the original drawing, now framed in a golden frame, and looked at all those people with wide eyes. "Good morning, everyone," Tayo began, adjusting the microphone. "Thank you for coming. I know many news stories have circulated about Balogun Hotels in recent weeks, and I am here today to clarify everything." He paused, looking at the cameras. 3 months ago, I was about to sign the bankruptcy of my company. I believed we were completely bankrupt, with no way out, no hope. But I was wrong, not because the numbers were bad, but because the numbers I received were false. A murmur spread through the audience, flashes fired. My former partner, Bio Davies, manipulated financial documents, concealed contracts, and tried to make me believe the company was in ruin. His goal was to force me to sell everything for a ridiculous price to a rival group, Zuma Global Group, in exchange for a millionaire commission. Questions began to be shouted from all sides, but Tayo raised his hand, asking for silence. I discovered the truth thanks to a very special person, and she is here with me today. He placed his hand on Chioma's shoulder, who smiled shyly at the cameras. This is Chioma Obi. She is 3 years old, and she saved Balogun Hotels. The reporters leaned forward, curious. Bimpe was already frantically taking notes. Chioma is the daughter of Mercy Obi, who worked as a cleaner in this company for 5 years. On the day I was about to sign the bankruptcy, Chioma found a true spreadsheet that my former partner had thrown in the trash. She picked up the paper, drew on it with crayons, and handed it to me. And that's how I discovered the sabotage. Absolute silence. Then, applause began slowly, but in seconds the entire room was standing, clapping. Chioma looked around, confused, but smiling. Mercy cried, trying to hide behind her hands. Mercy and Chioma reminded me of something fundamental. Tayo continued, his voice emotional, that a company is not made of numbers or contracts. It is made of people, of honest workers who wake up every day to do their job in the best possible way. And it is for these people that I decided to fight. He picked up a folder and held it up for everyone to see. Today, I am officially announcing that Balogun Hotels will not close. On the contrary, we are launching an expansion plan that will create 1,000 more jobs in the next 2 years. And we are inaugurating the Chioma Obi Foundation, a non-profit organization that will support single mothers and vulnerable families. More applause, more flashes. Bimpe already knew that this would be the story of the year. And there's more, Tayo said, picking up a bronze plaque. As of today, this tower will be called Balogun Obi Towers, in honor of Chioma and Mercy, who saved not only a company but thousands of lives. Mercy covered her face, sobbing. Chioma jumped into her mother's lap, not quite understanding what was happening, but feeling that it was something good. After the press conference, reporters surrounded Mercy, asking questions. How do you feel being recognized nationally? I still can't believe this is happening, Mercy replied, wiping her tears. I was just doing my job. Chioma was just being a child. We didn't expect any of this. And what would you say to other mothers in a similar situation? Mercy thought for a moment, then looked directly at the camera. Don't give up. Keep fighting even when everything seems impossible, because sometimes help comes from where you least expect it, and sometimes our children are stronger than we imagine. More tears, more applause. Bimpe Akande published the article that same night. The title was, "The Crayon Girl Who Saved Thousands, How Chioma Obi Uncovered a Millionaire's Scheme and Taught a Nation the Value of Honesty." The story went viral. In 48 hours, Chioma became a national phenomenon. Television programs wanted to interview her, brands wanted to sponsor her, schools wanted to honor her. But Tayo and Mercy protected Chioma from all of it. They knew she was just a child and needed to live like a child. She has already done her part, Tayo told an insistent television producer. Now let her just be Chioma. And that's exactly what they did. 6 months after the press conference, Balogun Hotels was unrecognizable. The company had fully recovered. Investors returned with full force, and new hotels were being inaugurated in 3 different states. The Chioma Obi Foundation had already helped over 200 families with scholarships, food packages, legal assistance, and psychological support. Mercy was the volunteer director, working alongside a dedicated team to ensure no mother went through what she had gone through. "Mummy, look what I made." Chioma shouted, running through the corridors of the Foundation's new office. It was a drawing of a colorful house with a smiling family in front. "It's beautiful, my love," Mercy said, taking the paper and sticking it on the communal kitchen refrigerator. Chioma was now 4 years old and enrolled in an excellent private school. She loved to draw, loved to tell stories, and still picked up old papers to make art, even though she had new boxes of materials at home. "She never changes, does she?" Tayo commented, entering the room and smiling at another one of Chioma's drawings. "Thank God," Mercy replied, approaching him. "I hope she never loses that simplicity." Tayo kissed Mercy's forehead, a gesture that had become natural between them. In recent months, they had grown closer and closer. Family dinners, weekend outings, nights talking late. They still didn't live together because Mercy wanted to take things slowly, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time. "I have a surprise for both of you," Tayo said mysteriously. "What surprise?" Chioma asked, dropping her crayons and running to him. "Come with me." They left the Foundation and got into Tayo's car. He drove for 20 minutes until they stopped in front of a new residential building in Ikoyi. It was elegant, but not ostentatious. "Perfect. What are we doing here?" Mercy asked, confused. Tayo took a key from his pocket and handed it to her. "This is your apartment." Mercy froze. "What?" "A penthouse, 4 bedrooms, a view of the park, fully furnished. It's yours." "Tayo, I can't accept this," Mercy began, but he interrupted her. "Yes, you can. You deserve it. Chioma deserves it." Mercy looked at the key, then at Tayo, then at Chioma, who was already jumping excitedly. "Can we see? Can we see?" the girl begged. Mercy smiled, tears returning. She took Tayo's and Chioma's hands, and the three went up together. The apartment was beautiful, spacious, full of natural light, tastefully decorated. It had an enormous living room, a full kitchen, large bedrooms, and even a studio just for Chioma to draw. "Tayo, this is too much," Mercy said. "Emotional." "It's not," he replied, pulling her closer. "You both changed my life. Let me give back at least a little." Chioma ran through the apartment, exploring every corner, screaming with joy. Mercy rested her head on Tayo's shoulder, feeling a peace she never imagined possible. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm the one who thanks you," Tayo replied daily. That night they had dinner in the new apartment, sitting on the floor because the furniture hadn't arrived yet. Chioma drew on the wall that Tayo said could be repainted, and, for the first time in a long time, Mercy felt that she was home. The following months were of adjustments, growth, and much love. Tayo spent more and more time with Mercy and Chioma. He would take the girl to school, pick her up from ballet, help with her homework, and Mercy saw how he looked at Chioma, with genuine affection, with pride, with love. "You are a father to her," Mercy said one night as they both drank wine on the apartment balcony. Tayo was silent for a moment, then smiled. "I want to be, indeed." He turned to her, taking her hand. "I want to be her father, officially. I want her to have my surname. I want her to call me Papa. I want to be part of this family." Mercy felt her heart race. "Tayo, marry me, Mercy." She widened her eyes. "What?" "Marry me. I love you. I love Chioma. I want to build a life with both of you, officially." Mercy couldn't answer. She could only cry and agree, repeating yes many times. Tayo took a small box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a simple but beautiful ring. He placed it on Mercy's finger, and the two embraced, crying together. In the next room, Chioma slept soundly, holding a new drawing she had made that day, a family of 3 people holding hands, smiling. The wedding happened 6 months later, in a small and intimate ceremony at the newly inaugurated Balogun Hotel's branch in Ikoyi. Only family and close friends were present. Baba Ayo, the doorman, cried throughout the ceremony. Malam Garba, the maintenance chief, was a groomsman. Chidinma was a bridesmaid, and Chioma was the flower girl, wearing a white dress and carrying a basket of petals. When Tayo and Mercy exchanged their vows, there wasn't a single person in the room who wasn't emotional. Their story had been impossible, improbable, but real. "I promise to love you," Tayo said, holding Mercy's hands, "and I promise to love Chioma as if she were my daughter, because to me, she is." Mercy could barely reply, her voice choked. "I promise to build a life by your side, and I promise never to forget where we came from." They kissed amidst applause and tears. At the reception, Chioma ran through the hall, danced with Tayo, ate cake until she couldn't take it anymore. And when everyone left, the 3 returned home together, officially a family. The following years were of growth. Chioma grew up, continued drawing, and began to show talent in mathematics, something Tayo encouraged with pride. Mercy graduated in administration, started working directly with Tayo at the company, and became a respected leader. The Chioma Obi Foundation expanded to 5 more states, helping thousands of families, and Balogun Hotels became a national benchmark in corporate social responsibility, recognized for treating its employees with dignity and respect. But the most special moment of all happened on a Tuesday night, 3 years after the wedding. Chioma, now 7 years old, was doing her homework at the kitchen table. Tayo was helping, and Mercy was preparing dinner. "Papa," Chioma said suddenly, without taking her eyes off her notebook. Tayo stopped, his heart tightening. It was the first time she had called him that. "Yes?" he replied, trying to control his emotion. "Can you help me with this sum here?" Tayo smiled, discreetly wiping his eyes. "Of course, my dear. Of course I can." Mercy, in the kitchen, heard everything. She turned and saw Tayo helping Chioma, both leaning over the notebook, and felt such great happiness that it barely fit in her chest. After dinner, Chioma asked to make a new drawing. She took her crayons, now much newer and more numerous, but still used the old ones occasionally because they had stories. "This one is special," she said, showing the drawing to Mercy and Tayo. It was a family, a woman, a man, and a girl, all smiling. And underneath, in crooked, colorful letters, it was written, "My happy family." Tayo took the drawing and hung it on the refrigerator next to all the others Chioma had made over the years. "You know what I think," he said, embracing Mercy and Chioma, "that this was the best story we could have written." Mercy agreed, kissing Chioma's forehead. And it all started with a crumpled paper and a box of crayons. Chioma smiled, returning to drawing, because for her, drawing was more than art. It was love. It was hope. It was her way of showing that even in the most difficult situations, beauty still exists. And as she drew, Tayo and Mercy stood there embraced, looking at the daughter who had changed everything. The girl who saved a company, unmasked a villain, and taught an entire country that sometimes heroes are just 3 years old with a box of crayons. On the balcony of the network's main hotel, where everything had begun, a bronze plaque was installed. Engraved on it was, "In honor of Chioma Obi, the girl who taught us that honesty, simplicity, and love are worth more than any fortune, and that sometimes to save an empire, all it takes is the courage of a child." And every time Tayo passed by there, he would stop, read the plaque, and smile, because he knew that story wasn't about money, success, or power. It was about family, it was about love, it was about second chances, and it was about how a simple crayon drawing can change everything. So, what did you think of the story? Leave your opinion in the comments. We love to know what you think. Don't forget to like the video to support us, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.